This weekend will see the 10th running of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and the final race of the 2018 F1 season. The Drivers' and Constructors' Championships have both been wrapped up going into the last race of the season. However, in 2010, going into the last race of the season, any one of 4 drivers could still mathematically win the championship, the first and only time that's happened in F1 history. One of the drivers hadn't even been first in the standings at any point in the season. Over the course of 1 hour and 40 minutes, however, only one would finish as the 2010 Formula 1 World Champion. Before we start, just like in my video of the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix, link is in the description, you'll see me using the Red Bull car from the 2010 season around Abu Dhabi, which 2 of the 4 drivers in Vettel and Webber used, as well as it being the car of the Constructors' Champions. With that being said, here's the story of the 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Going into the 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Ferrari driver and 2005 and 2006 World Champion Fernando Alonso led the championship with 246 points, with the 2 Red Bull drivers Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel both looking for their first title in second and third place, 8 and 15 points behind Alonso respectively. 24 points behind Alonso sat McLaren driver and 2008 World Champion Lewis Hamilton, looking for his second championship but needing to win the race and hope the others had a bad day at the office in order for that to happen. The 2010 season was the first season to introduce the new point system, which is still used today, with 25 points for a win, 18 points for second place, 15 points for third place, all the way down to 1 point for 10th place. This is compared to the system used from 2003 to 2009, which saw drivers score 10 points for a win, all the way down to 1 point for 8th place, with the new system giving the second place driver more incentive to win the race than before, as it would mean a gain of 7 points compared to 2 from the old system. This all meant there were a few different scenarios for each driver to win. If Alonso finished first or second, he was guaranteed to win the title. If Webber won the race, Alonso needed to finish second. If Vettel won the race, Alonso needed to finish fourth. For Webber, he needed to beat Alonso by 9 points, or win the race and hope Alonso didn't finish second. He also needed to avoid being beaten by Vettel by 8 points, and avoid Vettel winning the race. For Vettel, he had to beat Alonso by 16 points, or 15 points with a race win, and beat Webber by 8 points, or win the race. For Hamilton, he had to win the race and then hope Alonso didn't score, Webber finished 6th or lower, and Vettel finished 3rd or lower. The full permutations are on the screen, and I will leave a link in the description to an article which was made at the time so you can have a read for yourself. With an 8-point lead over his closest rival, Alonso was the favourite to win his 3rd World Championship. However, Red Bull had won the Constructors' Championship the race before, and Vettel had won the inaugural Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2009 and had won 2 of the last 3 races. In fact, Alonso and Vettel had won the last 5 races between them, with Alonso winning 3 and Vettel winning 2. There was a lot of media coverage before the race, however, that Red Bull would use team orders to influence the championship if one of their drivers was in a position to win it, just like Ferrari had used them to win the German Grand Prix early in the season to Alonso's advantage. This was denied by team principal Christian Horner and team owner Dietrich Mateschitz, however, who said Red Bull would not interfere with their drivers to stop Alonso winning the championship, although Vettel did state he would be happy to help Webber win the championship if he was in a position to do so. The race weekend would be the final one for Bridgestone as tyre manufacturer in Formula 1, with Pirelli taking over for the 2011 season. It was also the final F1 race for Lucas di Grassi, Christian Klein and Robert Kubica, who had a rally accident in early 2011, although he is set to race for Williams in the 2019 season alongside George Russell. It would be Vettel who would grab pole position, however, his 10th of the season, ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Alonso qualified 3rd, with Hamilton's McLaren teammate Jenson Button starting 4th, Webber started in 5th, and Alonso's teammate Felipe Massa started 6th, meaning the top 6 included all the drivers from the top 3 teams, with Barrichello the best of the rest for Williams in 7th. If the race finished how the grid lined up, Alonso would win the World Championship. As the race started, however, Alonso had a poor start and was overtaken by Button to go down to 4th place, meaning if he was overtaken by Webber, Vettel would be world champion. Going into turn 6, an incident took place which changed the course of the race and the championship. Mercedes driver and 7 times world champion Michael Schumacher tried to overtake his teammate Nico Rosberg in the corner, but failed and span, facing head-on into the incoming cars. Force India driver Vitantonio Liuzzi hit Schumacher's car head-on, narrowly avoiding Schumacher's helmet. This brought out the safety car. The 2010 season had seen refueling banned for the first time since 1993. The tyres were also quite durable as well, with a one-stop strategy commonplace throughout the season. Both the option tyre, the softer compound marked with a line around the tyre, and the prime tyre, the harder compound, needed to be used in a race. With this in mind, 6 drivers came into the pits at the end of lap 1 to change tyres, including Rosberg, Renault driver Vitaly Petrov, and Toro Rosso driver Jaime Alguersuari, with all 6 rejoining between 17th and 22nd place. This meant all 6 drivers didn't have to stop again unless they wanted or needed to. At the end of lap 5, the safety car came in and the race got back underway, with Vettel leading Hamilton, Button, Alonso and Webber. Webber clipped the Armco barriers with his tyres at turn 19 on lap 9, but escaped any damage. He was complaining about losing the rear tyres and he pits at the end of lap 11, swapping from option to prime tyres. However, this put him in 16th place, behind the early pitters of Rosberg, Petrov and Alguersuari, although he managed to pass Alguersuari on lap 14. This cost Webber time though, and Ferrari pit Massa hoping he would come out ahead of Webber, but unfortunately for them he didn't, losing around 1.4 seconds in the pit stop compared to Webber's stop. If Webber overtook Alonso, Alonso would not win the championship. At Singapore early in the season, Webber had pitted early and managed to overtake traffic to keep in touch with the leaders, and Ferrari were worried he would do the same. This was also coupled with the fact the option tyres were degrading. Vettel's times dropped from 1 minute 45.337 on lap 8 to 1 minute 46.667 on lap 13, and there had been suggestions earlier in the week that the option tyres may not last too long. Webber also managed the fastest lap of the race on his prime tyres, so Ferrari pit Alonso at the end of lap 15, and he rejoined in 12th place, ahead of Webber. However, he was behind Rosberg and Petrov, who had both stopped, and with Vettel, Hamilton and Button also ahead, he was in net 6th place, meaning Alonso had to overtake both Rosberg and Petrov, or hope one of the top 3 had a problem, in order to win the championship. Alonso had previous with Petrov as well, as it took him 40 laps to overtake him at Turkey. After Alonso came into the pits, the option tyres went through their graining period, meaning the laps of the front 3 all started to come back down again. They all had to make a gap between themselves and 4th place Kobayashi and 5th place Kubica in order to pit and come out ahead, with Kubica starting on the prime tyres. Both Alonso and Webber caught up to Petrov on lap 18, the same lap Barrichello pitted. Alonso's engineer came on the radio telling him it was critical to pass Petrov, as well as telling him to use the best of his talent later in the race as well. On lap 23, he tried to pass Petrov at turn 11, but had to use the runoff area to avoid hitting him and stayed behind. On the same lap, Hamilton pit and came out 5th, behind Vettel, Button, Kamui Kobayashi and Kubica. 1 lap later, Vettel pit, and thanks to a great in-lap and a pit stop 7/10 quicker than Hamilton's, he managed to stay ahead of Hamilton and crucially stayed ahead of Kobayashi and Kubica as well, to come out in 2nd behind Button. Kubica then overtook Kobayashi at turn 11 on lap 25, and 1 lap later Hamilton overtook Kobayashi in the same corner. However, Hamilton then got stuck behind Kubica, just like Alonso was stuck behind Kubica's teammate Petrov. Laps 33 to 37 saw Kobayashi, Hülkenberg and Buemi all pit, promoting Alonso to 8th and Webber to 9th, with Kubica and Suttle still to pit in front of them as they both started on the prime tyre. As Kubica stayed out for longer and held up Hamilton, the gap between Kubica and Alonso was growing as well, and by lap 40 the gap was around 20 seconds, close to the gap needed to stay ahead after a pit stop. Alonso was still trying to overtake Petrov, but he wasn't getting any closer. At the end of lap 39, Button pitted and rejoined in 4th behind Kubica and Hamilton, with Vettel regaining the lead, 12 seconds ahead of Kubica. Kubica pitted at the end of 46, swapping from the prime tyres to the options, promoting Hamilton to 2nd and Button to 3rd. However, he managed to stay ahead of Petrov, Alonso and Webber, having built a big enough gap. Hamilton immediately went 1.4 seconds quicker, but the gap was over 11 seconds to Vettel, which would likely be too much for Hamilton. Kubica had managed to help Vettel by holding Hamilton up to make a gap and by coming out of the pits ahead of Alonso. After Suttle had made his only pit stop a lap later, the order was Vettel, Hamilton, Button, Rosberg, Kubica, Petrov, Alonso, Webber, Alguersuari and Massa. Alonso's real hope now was for Vettel to have an issue to force him to retire, or similar to the one in Bahrain at the start of the season, so that Hamilton could overtake him, which would give Alonso the championship. The gap was around 9 seconds on lap 50, but it wasn't getting much closer, with Vettel pulling away from Hamilton again. At the same time, Red Bull were telling Webber to try and overtake Alonso if possible, which would help Vettel out in case he had a problem, as well as to stop Alonso making up places. A few laps later, Vettel crossed the line to win the race, but he didn't know what it meant in terms of the championship, and after the drama in Brazil in 2008, only until Hamilton, Button and Rosberg had crossed the line could Red Bull be sure that Vettel would be world champion, with Vettel's race engineer Rocky telling Vettel it was looking good, but he needed to wait. Hamilton finished in 2nd, Button in 3rd and Rosberg in 4th, so it was official. Sebastian Vettel was the 2010 Formula 1 World Champion. He had not led the World Championship all season until after the final race of the season, only the 3rd time that has happened, along with John Surtees in 1964 and James Hunt in 1976. He also became the youngest world champion in F1 history, beating Hamilton's record by 166 days, with 2008 world champion Lewis Hamilton finishing in 2nd and 2009 world champion Jenson Button finishing in 3rd. The last two world champions shared the podium with the new world champion in Sebastian Vettel. Vettel finished on 256 points, with Alonso 4 points behind in 2nd. Webber finished 3rd on 242 points, and Hamilton finished 4th on 240 points. Red Bull finished on 498 points, with McLaren 2nd and Ferrari 3rd. In pitting Alonso to cover off Webber, Ferrari had thrown away the championship. If they had copied what Hamilton, Vettel or even Button had done by staying out for longer, Alonso would have made enough of a gap to stay ahead of Petrov and Rosberg in the pits, and wouldn't have been overtaken by Kubica either. However, at the time, it looked like the option tyres were the slower tyres to be on, especially with Webber setting the fastest lap, and Ferrari wanting to stay ahead of Webber to make sure they could finish 4th. They may not have expected Petrov to keep Alonso behind him for nearly 3/4 of the race though, but it may not be a massive surprise. As shown from the race the year earlier, overtaking isn't the easiest thing to do around that track. Added to this that Petrov was trying to have a good race to try and get himself a contract for the 2011 season, plus the fact Petrov had a new engine and was 3rd quickest in the speed trap in qualifying, 3.3 km/h quicker than Alonso, and it is a lot clearer to see why Alonso struggled and why, with hindsight, it was the wrong call to make. One thing not always noted was that after Felipe Massa pitted on lap 13, he came out behind the Toro Rosso of Jaime Alguersuari, who had pitted like Rosberg and Petrov after the safety car. By the end of the race, he was still behind Alguersuari as the Toro Rosso driver finished 9th and Massa finished 10th, showing how hard overtaking was around Abu Dhabi. If they had left Massa out for a while and seen he had struggled to get past Alguersuari, they may have realised it wasn't going to be easy for Alonso to get past Rosberg or Petrov. Alonso has not won a World Championship since, despite coming close in 2012 against Vettel as well. He left Ferrari in 2014 to join McLaren for the 2015 season and has struggled a lot, with his highest finish only 5th. The 2018 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is set to be Alonso's last in Formula 1, and despite missing out in 2010, he is still one of the best F1 drivers of all time. Mark Webber would finish 3rd in 2011 and 2013 before leaving F1 to join the World Endurance Championship. After winning 4 races in 2010, he would only go on to win 3 races over the next 3 seasons, as he played second fiddle to Vettel. He had led the championship before crashing out in Korea, one of 2 retirements that season, along with his scary crash at the European Grand Prix in Valencia, where he was unharmed. Along with Alonso's bad strategy call, Webber's decision to pit early after struggling on his tyres was a bad call too, although if Alonso hadn't pitted in front of him, he may have been able to get past Petrov, although he would still have to pass Rosberg and hope that Vettel didn't win the race, which he did. Sebastian Vettel would go on to dominate for the next few years after his win in 2010, winning the next 3 World Championships, with Red Bull winning the next 3 Constructors' Championships as well. Since the hybrid era of Formula 1 started in 2014, however, he has failed to win a championship, with Lewis Hamilton dominating the scene. He has made some high-profile mistakes over the last couple of seasons, which you wouldn't expect from a 4-time world champion, including deliberately crashing into his championship rival Hamilton in Baku in 2017, and crashing out of the race while leading in Germany in 2018, to name just 2. From scoring points in his first race in 2007, to winning in his first full season in the rain with Toro Rosso in Italy in 2008, however, he showed his talent from a young age, culminating in a 2nd place finish in 2009 and the championship itself in 2010, and it can't be questioned how good of a driver he is, even if he did have the best car on the grid. He now drives for Ferrari, the team he beat to the title in 2010, who have not won a driver's title since Kimi Räikkönen in 2007. Will Vettel and Ferrari be able to bring back some of that success and finally win another World Championship in 2019? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Leave in the comments below what your memories were of this race and what your favourite title deciding race is in the history of F1. Check out my previous F1 videos where I compared Hamilton's stats in F1 to Schumacher and Fangio, as well as my video on the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix. Also, let me know what you want to see me talk about in the next video. See you next time.